There's one part of the old me I can't quite shake. I still believe in the one, that the right person is out there for me.
Hey guys, Shalana here. Welcome to the Binge Zone. On today's video, we're talking about You Season 3, and not just You, but the psychology of Joe Goldberg. Because Joe is an egocentric, narcissistic, murderous, delusional sociopath. But in my last video, especially in the comment section, a lot of people believe that if Joe was to truly be himself and not put on this facade of who he's trying to be, he would actually find love. But I don't think that's true. I don't believe it, and Joe doesn't believe it. And in season 3, Joe is actually in love with 3 different women in the span of a year. We have Natalie, his neighbor, Love, his actual wife, and Marianne, his new muse. But yet, all 3 of these women have something in common, and that's detrimental to who Joe is, because Joe ultimately is delusional and is looking for the ideal woman. Because in Joe's mind, Joe has this picture of an ideal woman, this perfect woman who has all these extra characteristics that aren't normally normal. Like, he puts them on a pedestal of perfection, and when they don't actually live up to that perfection, they're not flawless, because obviously they're human, and like all humans, we have flaws. Even Marianne goes on to tell Joe this season that the saints themselves weren't actually saints. So this ideal woman that Joe's looking for off rip is non-existent, but in his mind, if he can find this perfect love, everything about his life will be validated. And this brings us to Sigmund Freud. If you guys have heard anything about psychology or psychoanalysis at all, we've heard of Sigmund Freud. And when it comes to Sigmund Freud and his psychoanalysis theory, Joe Goldberg fits this to a T. More specifically, in his look for the ideal woman, Joe has this Madonna complex. Now, I'm not talking about Madonna like a virgin Madonna. I'm talking about the ideal of Madonna. Back in the day, Madonna was actually referred to as a saint, because back in the day, the Virgin Mary herself was often referred to as a Madonna, this saintly figure, and that's what Joe's looking for. And with this Madonna complex, you have this ideal version of a woman that you're gonna love, and then you have the actuality of what women are. So the Madonna complex is essentially looking for this deified woman, and then being in love and enamored by her, while also being repulsed by the sexuality and the sensuality and the flaws, so to speak, of said women. So with Joe and his Madonna complex, you can see that Joe is looking for this woman who's supposed to replace his mother. Because Joe ends up idealizing these women, creating these versions of them that don't actually exist. And when he starts to meet them, he starts to see the crack behind them, and that's really what shatters his worldview of these women. Because back in season 1, when Joe met Beck, Joe was in love with Beck, started stalking her to the point that Beck was some sort of perfect idealized woman. But as he started to get to know her, he started seeing her character weaknesses, her flaws, and the fact that she had her own psychological problems, and she ends up cheating on Joe, which devastates him, because how could his love be this? How could she do this to him? And that's because he doesn't look at the flaws of that person, but he's thinking about her Madonna version, the characteristic of her that he created, not one that she told him, not one that she's representing, but what he believes she should be best, just based off of looking at her, and she's fine. And he's like, oh, she must be my Madonna. And even in season 2, the character of Love, Joe was in love with Love. He thought everything that was wrong with Beck would be fixed with Love, and he idealized her. Everything about Love made Joe see her as the Madonna that he thinks she is. But then, when he comes to find out Love is also a psychopathic killer like he is, he's repulsed by her. He cannot love her, even when she's pregnant and has his child this season, and he's trying to force himself to be in a relationship with her. He just can't let his guard down. He just can't love her because he knows that she's a killer. He sees her flaws. Even though throughout this season and last, he was talking about all her positive traits, and all her positive traits, I was gonna say they outweigh her negative, but killing, you can't outweigh killing. But all her positive traits, that the list of them far exceeds her negative ones, but because of that psychopathic killer, that flaw he sees in her, he just can't. Her willingness to kill totally killed the Madonna image he had of Love. Even Natalie, he didn't even know Natalie this season. He already had an image of her. And then he comes to find out after she's dead that she wasn't this damsel. She wasn't the Madonna he was looking for. She was actually a bored housewife who was looking at the loser neighbor, and she wanted some dick because her husband was around. And that destroyed his worldview of her too, because he idealized her. Before he even had a conversation with her, he was stalking her. My man was stalking her. My man was beating his meat at the side of the store, fantasizing about her. And it's all off of just seeing her. So we see this pattern in Joe. He sees the person, doesn't know them. Because they're beautiful, he's starting to actually fantasize about them and putting them on a pedestal that they never asked to be on, just off looks alone. But going back to Sigmund Freud for a second, because Freud had these very interesting theories, and a lot of them are kind of sick and disturbing when you think about it, like the Oedipus Complex, but Joe fits those modes to a T. Look at the Oedipus Complex, for example, right? The Oedipus Complex is when somebody loves the parent of the opposite gender. For example, if you're a boy, you're in love with your mother and you're looking for your mother and your partner. And if you're a girl, you're looking for your father. So you have this desire, this psychosexual attachment to your parent of the opposite gender. And we see this with Joe, because last season we got a glimpse of Joe and his mother's relationship, and this season we got to see how it really unfolded. Because as a young boy, the first woman you actually love is your mother, and in Joe's case, this is true. And when he saves her from abuse, the ultimate declaration of love, Joe kills someone for his mother. And instead of thanking Joe, instead of appreciating Joe for what she did, she shipped him off to boarding school and ghosted Joe. And for Joe, that never quite sat right with him, because why would she not accept him for who he was? Why would she not accept him for what he did? He killed somebody, so he always had the fantasy that his mom would come back, that he did the ultimate gesture of love, and she would come back, but she never did. And he goes to confront his mom and asks his mom, why? Like, what the fuck is this?
What's wrong with me? I know you try so hard to be good. Then why'd you leave me there?
He sees his mom with a whole new kid, and Joe's like, yo, like, I killed somebody. Love me. And she's like, I messed up, Joe. You're fucked up inside. Like, sometimes you just have to start all over, which kind of also sets Joe on this trend we see at the end of every season. Joe moves to a new city and starts a new life, because he learned that from his mother. When you fuck up and you're fucked up inside, you have to find somewhere else to start anew. And Joe internalized that, because he did everything for his mom, his ideal woman, and she rejected him. So he thinks there's something inside of him that's not worth loving. And when I started this video, I did talk about narcissism, and Joe himself is narcissistic, and even the Oedipus Complex as a whole is a form of narcissism. It's actually the pinnacle of narcissism to think that the person who birthed you, or the creature, or whatever who birthed you, I said creature, the person who birthed you is the one who gave you life. And to think that you should find someone like that, or you should be with that person, is the ultimate form of narcissism, because you believe yourself to be on the same pedestal as your creator. And it's like, bruh, yo, that's next level narcissistic. And staying with Freud, we're gonna look at the idea of the id, the ego, and the superego. Now think of it this way. This is the id, your basic instincts, your raw carnal instincts. Your superego is your morals, things that you've learned and adapted as the pinnacle of what things should be. And the ego is you. So in Joe's case, he's the ego, and these are his ids and superegos. So in Joe's case, his id is he sees a beautiful woman, he wants her, she's his to have, she's going to love him, and he's going to get her. That's his raw instinct. But then his superego steps in, and that's his more romantic side, the side that idealizes this woman, the side that puts her on a pedestal and thinks of himself as the knight in shining armor who has to save this pinnacle Madonna woman, who has to go above and beyond to the point that it's super uncomfortable to cherish, obsess, and stalk and be consumed with her. And that's his good side. And his ego is himself, and he takes them both, combines them, and he becomes this version of Joe, which is the one who rationalizes what he does. When he kills somebody, it's him rationalizing why he's doing it, the moralistic views of his carnal nature. I want her, so I'm gonna be this knight to save her. He's a bad guy, I'm gonna kill this guy for stepping in the way, or kill this woman for getting in the way. But it's justifiable because it's for the greater good of love. And that's really where his mind is. So Joe is as fucked up as Sigmund Freud actually thinks the psychosexual behaviors of people are. He's the incarnation of it, but damn, that nigga's charming. If there's one thing about Joe, he makes this thing so charming. He's so charismatic with it that you kind of forgive his sociopathic ways, because He makes it look so good. But all of this is to mask the truth that Joe knows. And it's the fact that he's unlovable. He has no self-love. So he's looking for external love validations by finding this perfect woman. If she can love him, then he's worthy of love, because Joe himself doesn't love himself. His mom told him this season, there's a monster in you, bro. And Joe does not love a monster. And that's revealed in this season and last season. Last season, when Joe had his whole acupuncture thing going on, he came out of it and came up with the idea that he's not worthy of love. He can't be loved. And it's like, even in this deep tantric state, at his core, he knows there's a monster in him that does not deserve to be loved. And in this season, when he's talking to the psychiatrist or psychologist, whoever she is, when he's talking to her and he tells her that if people knew who he really was, they would not love him. He's not worthy of that love. And because of these deep feeling issues with himself, that's why he can't love himself. And that's why he can't love love, because love herself is a mirror of Joe. She's everything Joe is, and Joe sees the monster in love, and that is an externalized version of the monster that Joe is. And he can't love her no matter how much he tries to force himself to love his actual wife. He can't, because he knows that monster that lurks beneath, and that monster is the same monster that he has. That's why he idealizes people. That's why he goes after Marianne as hard as he does, even though he swore himself he wouldn't, because he doesn't see her darkness. He doesn't see her past. He's obsessed with her now. He knows about her past and about her being an addict, but he sees her conquering her monsters, being the best mother that she can be, as an idealized version of what he can be. So he becomes obsessed with her. He follows her to Paris at the end of the season. And it's like, she's his new obsession, his new muse, because she conquered the monster he's not able to tame, the monster love was not able to tame, and she's his new muse. She's the one who's going to deliver him from what he's lacking, and that's his lack of self-love. Or so he thinks, because Marianne is a person and she's flawed, but Joe doesn't know that yet. So we can tell in season 4, it's going to be a rude awakening for Joe yet again, until he finds that self-love. Until Joe can look himself in the mirror and love what he sees, he's doomed to repeat this cycle over and over and over again. So essentially, Joe is looking for the perfect woman that doesn't exist in order to fulfill an intimacy that he didn't receive as a child, and plans to achieve this by rescuing these women that didn't ask to be rescued, by validating himself because his mother did not validate him. These women could potentially do it. And it could be said that Joe isn't actually saving these women that he believes are perfect, but he's also trying to protect his ideal of what he has of these women. So it's not the fact that they're perfect themselves, but if he can save them, if he can preserve the perfect ideal image of them, they don't have to meet that criteria, so long as he can preserve that idea in him. So he's not really saving them for their benefit, but it's more so for it's more so to feed his innate selfishness, his innate need for self-validation. Because if he can protect these idealized, beautiful women, if he can truly protect love, then he himself is worthy of it. So all in all, unless something drastic happens to Joe, Joe's not changing. You's gonna be fired no matter what season it comes out. And I'm loving it, because it's always the monologues of Joe that get to me, because Joe can see the situation one way while we see another way, and he comes up with these grand ideals that just ain't true in order to justify his bullshit. But anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on season 3 and the psychology of Joe. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, binge on.